I'd like to begin by thanking you very, very much for the time that you've given us today. And as one of the world's experts, recognized experts on the history of World War II, I'd like you to characterize the efforts of Pope Pius XII in dealing with the issues that he had to confront during the war.
The Pope was in a very difficult situation. One forgets that after the 1st of September 1939, Nazism was dominant in Europe. With each conquest, Scandinavian countries, Norway, Denmark, France, Belgium, Holland, German power increased, and the power of the Gestapo to wreak vengeance on any opponent or anybody who was thought to be acting against the Nazi ideology was enormous. The Pope had responsibility for the whole Catholic community of Europe, and from September 1939, 30 million Polish Catholics were under the heel of tyranny, so anything that emerged from the Vatican might endanger their lives, and he had to walk this extraordinary tightrope between his own feelings, conscience, moral stand, and the lives of Catholics throughout Europe. I think that the Pope and the Vatican had to be tremendously careful at every stage of the war not to make things worse for the Catholics of Europe, who were already suffering tremendously. It's a mistake to think that somehow the Vatican, by its very existence, protected the Catholics of Europe. The Nazis were actively and viciously hostile to any manifestation of Catholic values, and made great efforts to destroy, for example, in Poland, the leadership of the Catholic Church right down to the level of the village priest.
Are you aware of the plan ordered by Adolf Hitler to invade the Vatican State, to kill the Roman Curia, and to seize Vatican property? And can you comment on the accuracy of this threat?
It certainly seems reasonable. One has to search for more documentation, and as one discovers in all historical work, new documentation is emerging all the time, so it would not surprise me if something turned up to confirm this thesis.
Mm-hmm. As an early example of papal outcry, we've been told that the Church spoke out through a pastoral letter from the Archbishop of Utrecht in Holland to protest the arrest of the Dutch Jews. This was answered by an acceleration of arrests and an inclusion of those Jews who converted to the Catholic faith. Are you aware of these events and other examples of Vatican protests against the Nazi regime?
There are many examples of protests, particularly by Catholic leaders, by cardinals, by papal nuncios. And one of the things which I think runs through all these episodes, of which are well documented, is that the Germans responded in the harshest possible way. And one of the things which many papal nuncios tried to do on instructions from the Vatican again and again was at least to protect those Jews who had converted to Catholicism. And even this proved to be an uphill and dangerous task. In my book, The Righteous, I must have 100 examples of Catholic churchmen, senior Catholic churchmen, cardinals, papal representatives, active in every country and taking a lead and taking risks and speaking out publicly. And then the extraordinary case of the Pope himself playing a major part, the leading part, in saving more Jews in Rome, percentage-wise, than was saved in any other capital city except Budapest, which was also a papal initiative. Certainly they tried to intercede in Slovakia, and they tried to intercede in Croatia. The papal nuncio in Croatia, in Zagreb, was particularly active, and of course the Croat regime was a fascist regime, so he was really battling against considerable local opposition, but he did so, and he did so effectively.
Would you comment on the effectiveness of these remarks and the effect that they had on future papal policy?
I think there's no doubt that the Nazi reaction to any protest, including papal protest and protest by Catholic leaders was to accelerate the persecutions. There was no element of give and take. There was simply the element of persecution, and protest was always dangerous. That's why the concept which Yad Vashem, the Holocaust institution in Jerusalem, created many years ago now of the righteous Gentile, is essentially to honor those who took these tremendous risks. It's not to honor people who would of course have been equally honorable, who demanded something and that was achieved. It's to honor people who, at the risk of their lives and the risk of the lives of those for whom they were fighting, did try to speak out.
But I'd like to read just a few of the Jewish comments on the Pope. This was prepared by Golda Meir, who was at that time the Israeli representative to the United Nations and the future Prime Minister of Israel. This is upon his death. He says, "We share the grief of the world over the death of His Holiness Pope Pius XII. During the 10 years of Nazi terror, when our people passed through the horrors of martyrdom, the Pope raised his voice to condemn the persecutors and to commiserate with their victims." Then Nachum Goldman was the president of the World Jewish Congress, had said, "With special gratitude we remember all he has done for the persecuted Jews during the darkest period in their entire history." And then Rabbi Elio Tuaf, who was the chief rabbi of Rome, said, "More than anyone else, we have had the opportunity to appreciate the great kindness, filled with compassion and magnanimity of the Pope, that the Pope displayed during those terrible years of persecution and terror." And then finally, Albert Einstein had said, "Only the Catholic Church protested against the Hitlerian onslaught on liberty. Up till then, I had not been interested in the Church, but today I feel a great admiration for the Church, which alone has had the courage to struggle for spiritual truth and moral truth. I am forced thus to confess that what I once despised, I now praise reversedly. And at any rate, these are the important statements of the Jewish community.
I think that the expressions of